Hey babes, welcome to Creating the Container, where we talk about the intersection of culture, technology, and driving change for women of today in a way that is most applicable, relevant, and exciting to them. Each week, we interview brilliant, multi-hyphenated women on the emerging technologies and cultural shifts that are rewiring our world today through their lens. Ultimately, our goal is to create a container of collaboration for women to collectively build the future, and we hope you will join us. XO!
I'm so excited to chat with you today. I feel like we have so many things to talk about. I can't wait to see where the convo goes. Your background obviously is quite heavy in kind of the crypto Web3 space, so definitely want to lean into that. But our intention also is to kind of talk about all the things to get other people, and specifically women that might not think they're interested in getting a wallet, investing in crypto, understanding an NFT, talk about all this stuff in a kind of a more relevant way for everyone, to get them hopefully interested and potentially excited about how they can be part of the convo. So
yes,
without further ado, definitely want to hear more about Clutch Wallet and tell us about your background and what you're building. We're familiar with it, but I'm sure you will explain it 1,000 times better than myself.
Thank you. Yes, I would love to tell you about Clutch Wallet. So we are building a digital currency wallet. We're calling it an ecosystem. And the reason we're calling it an ecosystem is because it's going to live as a mobile app on your phone. It's going to be a web application that you can log into and a Chrome extension. A big part of Web3 is kind of decentralization and this idea of kind of connecting into different user experience and product experiences. And the wallet is going to play host to a lot of those kind of integration experiences for you as a user. So we're building a wallet ecosystem. It's marketed towards women, and it's very intentional in that we have identified that 80% of women across the world haven't touched or interacted with cryptocurrencies just yet. And so building a product that directly speaks to them and welcomes them into the industry is something that we're obviously very passionate about. We're taking a very different lens as well to the wallet. At the moment, people think of it as this experience where you come, you like purchase your crypto, or you might host it through the wallet. And we will have that functionality, that baseline functionality of like hosting, swapping, purchasing. But we see so much room for innovation around education and incentivized education. So many times I like sitting with people and we're sending them to like YouTube videos and then like read this article and then just like pop onto this Twitter thread and like this is all the resources for content and like education. And I think, look, a lot of people are kind of working in the education space, but bringing that in to where you're like investing and the question comes up was really important to us. And then adding a layer of community in there as well. So the community part is still building. I'd love to have like a chat space. My co-founder would love to have like a comment section under some of like transactions. So we're still kind of playing around with that idea, but that is the general thesis in a nutshell.
I love it. And I think Joe knows this, ecosystem is one of my favorite words to describe a lot of businesses today, but I think that's super smart. And, you know, it's such a small thing, but one of the things I remember being the most surprised about when I first entered this space, specifically with interaction with different wallet options, even the biggest players in the space, was nothing is mobile first, which we have been, my background's in product. I've built quite a few digital products. Everything for years has been a mobile first approach. And we won't get into kind of why that's happening, but I just was so blown away by that little detail. I love that you're aggregating everything into one place, because another thing that has been surprising, but there's not really hasn't been a workaround. And this is why I think it's so smart you're designing something for women, but also we know with that will come a level of sophistication and detail to the user experience and the simplicity of the design.
Yes.
But we've all been, minted an NFT, and especially your first time, you're literally like, they create these awesome YouTube videos and you're linking out and trying to watch it and do the thing. And it's so clunky. But again, when we look at how we move through the current digital space, it seems so archaic. So I'm personally really jazzed to see this come to life. I think it's going to help a lot of women, get over that barrier to entry, which is usability.
Yeah. This is like, I think we're at a time just like industry wide, where I step back and like look at it and I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense. We've had a lot of really intelligent people who are developers that have like built this technology out, and it is incredible technology that is being built. The problem is that a lot of the people that have been building that have then also been the people that have been trying to create like the user experiences around them. And this is where like, please enter like women and men who are product people, user experience people, to come in and say like, yo, that doesn't make sense. Do we really need to explain in depth this component to get the user to do this action? And so I kind of liken it to the way that I think about driving a car. I have no idea what is under the hood. My dad has tried to explain it to me numerous times. I check out, I'm like, yo, I'm going to be one of those people, take the car to the mechanic, or I'm going to call you when shit goes wrong. And I don't need to know how this stuff works to turn it on. Unfortunately, it's okay. It's just where we're at. That is the product experience that I think like we need for like the crypto and Web3 world, which is this ability to like come in, turn on the car, use the damn thing and enjoy yourself, and off you go, as opposed to like technically understanding what goes where and how it connects to each other and all the bits and pieces.
Totally. And it's, if we look back at the adoption curves of technology with every major technology over the last 100 years, the curve looks very similar, right? Car is a phenomenal example. The usability has gotten much better, but for that mass adoption to happen, when that happens on the adoption curve, it's when the usability starts to be designed for the everyday person. And most people, like you said, have no interest in understanding what's under the hood. Just like most of us aren't thinking about what's, HTTPS stand for and what does it mean for my security. We just want to show up. We want to get the action done. We want it to be fluid. And that certainly hasn't been the case, but I have said that from the beginning, and I didn't even understand, like when I wasn't understanding the tech, it was so clunky. And my husband's an engineer and is such a linear thinker. And so when I would talk to him about a lot of my ideas, he'd get so in the weeds with like how we would do it month over month. I'd be like, Nick, someone will figure this out. It's not rocket science, just trust. Like this is, and we're slowly seeing it happen. And this is where I think we just need definitely more women, but just even more people from all across the world,
like from products.
One of the things I'm thinking a lot about at the moment, because I'm working on a similar product, so a wallet product, very different audience. And my background is regulatory risk from working in a bank. And I think there's a real kind of line between simplifying, but still letting people understand what they're actually doing. You've got to be clear and not mislead people. So it's kind of teeing it off between, we really want to make this intuitive and feel natural to you. We don't want to explain fundamentally what a blockchain is, because who cares? But so for things like if you're depositing through an app into Aave, can we call that a savings account? Because it fundamentally works differently to a savings account. But to help the average user, calling it a savings account would be much more intuitive. So there's a fine line there. And one of the things you mentioned, I'd love to hear your thoughts on. So you mentioned that decentralization is a big point of crypto. And I agree. So the early blossomers in Web3 and crypto, a lot of us are very values driven, right? We're in it for decentralization, freedom, all of this amazing stuff. But I suppose when we go towards mainstream adoption, firstly, do people care? And secondly, does it matter? When you're building Clutch, how are your thoughts shaping around that?
Yeah, it's such a great question. We as a company are very values-based around this. And it's been interesting because when we started building this, it was August of last year. And I wouldn't say there was like a lot of real world examples that had played out as much that you could draw on to like really argue for the decentralization kind of part. Often we would refer to like the 2008 kind of banking market crash, global financial crisis that we went through, and I guess the role that banks and people had to play in that experience. But I think what's been very interesting more recently is to watch the play out of the riots or activists in Canada and the process those people went through where, it was a democratic country. There was definitely a very strong response from the government and from police where people were identified that were protesting on the roads, and basically their bank accounts were frozen. And then when they turned to crypto, their centralized exchanges and accounts with centralized crypto products was also frozen. And the ability to do that is there when you are onboarded through license, passport, those basic KYC kind of products. And so when I looked at that kind of in isolation as an experience, that was very interesting to me, that I guess that was a possible scenario that can play out. And when you don't have the access and control over your investments and your assets and your funds, these are some of the kinds of things that happen. On like more of a bigger scale, and this isn't so much about like autonomy over your assets, but I think just watching the role that government has to play at the moment in Russia and Ukraine and the war that's kind of playing out, and the decisions that are being made by a person, a group, for an entire country that is devaluing their local currency and I guess the value that they hold in their assets, you start to see where like building some level of autonomy around the value that you've put into assets and investments is something that is probably of use and of interest to some people. Just to kind of give you one more rounded example as to, I guess, where the world of DeFi for me is very exciting, and it's like something that for our product I'm very passionate about building for. There's a big group of unbanked individuals in the world, in particular women in the Middle East, women in certain areas around the world who, for whatever reason, be it the relationship that they're in, or the fact that they don't have identities because of where they were born into, can't actually open bank accounts and have access to finance and money. And to me, that leads to like prosperous life and security and a kind of life experience that I would really hope most people get to kind of live. And so decentralized products where you don't have to open an account to receive money with identification and in a way that you can kind of own that experience yourself through technology is something that like makes me really passionate and excited about DeFi. And we've found just recently a group of women that our product can help in that regard. So I'm really excited. Sorry, that was such an essay of a response.
No, I love that.
That's right. I get really excited about it.
I love you for saying all of that because I could not.
Whole time I was like, Jo is geeking out in her brain right now.
Absolutely, yes. And I think that's exactly why it's so important that people who kind of do understand the values and why we need these things for the reasons you've just said are building as well. And it's incredible to see a woman who's doing that and addressing the issues that women around the world have. As I said, we're building a wallet app as well. And we recently done a blog about what is APY in crypto, in DeFi. And we just got an email today off a guy. He'd taken the time to write back and say, thank you. It's really good to get this information because nobody in traditional finance is really addressing the problem that we as Muslims face, where we've lost trust in the financial system. We're storing our money under our beds, but also we can't access interest from traditional routes. So from what I understand, Muslims don't take interest from lending products, whereas what DeFi offers, quite often there are specific lending pools which will pay interest from transaction fees. So that's another example of a huge use case that is just not being served well at the moment.
Yes.
I think we have a responsibility to learn from everything we learned in the last 10 years across Web 2. And one of those, I think, is our responsibility as builders and just as human beings living in this time to make sure we're doing our due diligence to proactively kind of get ahead of certain problems or kind of the dark side of these emerging technologies. And as we all know well, I'm not going to go into this, there's definitely ways that Web3, crypto, DeFi could end up being really not a good thing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But, and I just finished a podcast that goes very deep on this, and it just makes you think, and I wasn't like a convert, like I'm going to end my business and go back to the traditional world. But you guys are just reminding me in such a huge way. This is why we need just not the finance bros and engineers and a small subset of people building, because you need everyone because there is so much good. This is what got us all into the space, right? The values you said earlier, Bec. And I think the more perspectives and experiences we can have, the more we can get really creative and make sure we're designing applications and using this technology in a way that it really, really drives change and helps people. So yeah, I thank you for bringing me back, guys. Is the point, you know?
And all
I don't know if you guys seen, I forgot the name, but it's a 2-hour YouTube video where this guy goes like deep on all the problems with NFTs. It has like 3 million views.
Yeah.
Joe, you'll be like, it would make you mad. But then I just listened to Ezra Klein interview him, who's like, one of the biggest New York Times economics / tech reporters. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a good listen. I think it's interesting to listen to both sides of it. But
this is the thing, right? As with everything, the yin and the yang of life.
The yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah, we can go down two paths with everything. And in reality, it's going to be a mix of both. It's probably going to be in the gray. We will get a lot of people are scared to use DeFi and are scared to use crypto. And I think a lot of potentially the regulation we've seen written so far is, by and large, this is changing now, but it's by people who are scared of crypto and DeFi because they think everyone in this space is a scammer. And it's obviously not the case. There are incredible people building amazing things. And I think one thing we should make clear, I suppose, when we're talking about it shouldn't just be tech bros building, I have so much respect for the tech bros who are building, because they have created a groundwork of something completely revolutionary, that so people like us can build apps using these money Legos that have been created by these mega brains. And what we've got now is this kind of landscape. Everything in DeFi, pretty much everything, is open source and permissionless, right? So you can copy and paste a load of code that somebody's written, paste it, build on it, make it better. And that's what we're all doing. In that, people, of course, are going to make shit things that we don't need. And people are going to exploit things, and people are going to commit fraud. But there's a whole load of incredible things being built as well. So
totally. And I thank you for saying that, Joe, because I actually don't even think it's the tech bros that the finger should be pointed at. With whether it's Web3, Web2, Web1, the engineers are the geniuses building and solving things. But when the money comes in, and this is a different conversation. But thank you for clarifying, because I love me some tech bros. My husband's one.
It's addressing the stereotypes that people are kind of hesitant to get into crypto, because a lot of people say, oh, it's full of tech bros, it's full of people sharing Pepe memes. Yeah, it is. I love the Pepe memes. But there's lots of us women as well. There's lots of everybody. It's the most.
I think go on TikTok. There's all sorts of weird shit there too. Yeah, we got the TikTok queen over here.
Oh God.
Exactly right. So one thing that everybody who watches this should go and do is go on Bec's TikTok and watch the whiteboard of crypto, because that was chef's kiss.
I liked it. Thank you.
How long do the whiteboards does that take you, that part of it?
Guys, I just did another one yesterday for crypto wallets, and it's gonna it blew my brain in half. I did it and I looked at it and I was like, no wonder people come here, and no wonder wallets are so goddamn confusing, because I've just kind of done it again for the crypto wallet. But it's so
good. It's so helpful.
Thank you.
To have the visual.
It is helpful. It's a visual. I'm very clearly a visual learner, and I also am a person that likes to contextually understand how things fit. And then also when I hear terms flying around, I want to understand, again, how they relate to different parts of the technology, where they fit things. Am I using it the right way? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I don't know. There's definitely a psychologist would probably look at my whiteboard and be like, this is how this person thinks. But the crypto whiteboard took me probably a week and a half. And it actually came out of, I was living in Launch House in New York, which, for background, they're a group. They started as a Tulum retreat of founders that worked together for a month, got so much done working together for a month. And we're like, hey, we should probably turn this into a business where we bring founders in who need to launch or work on a problem. And then you work around people that are doing the same thing, and then you kind of go on your merry way. And so they've done that. They've gotten funded. They've got great backers like A16Z, and they've got a couple of different houses around America where founders can apply. They go, they do a live-in residency for a month, and then they kind of come out after that time period, hopefully with achieving their goals. And so I went into this house and I saw the whiteboard, and I started visualizing this thing, because I was just finding the question would be how do I start? Where do I go? And I have this slide presentation, but it again, didn't show the interrelationship between everything. And I think that was something as well that I was recognizing, the foundational part of blockchain's been sitting underneath all of these product experiences that everything is built on. It's a big piece, and that visually could be cool. So that was the initial idea. And every day I would just add different layers or parts to the whiteboard, and then pitch it back to everyone in the house. And they'd be like, oh, I'm not sure, maybe this, or I don't agree with that, or you shouldn't have that visual just sitting there. And so it was this refined experience until I got to the end of it. Was okay, this is it. A week and a half later.
It's so helpful. And also I like look back because I'm the same. My brain is exactly the same. And early on, I was doing it to try to wrap my brain around it, but I was doing the visuals in Canva because I was trying to kill two birds with one stone to also create Instagram content.
Yes, graphics.
And when I first saw your first TikTok that I watched, I was like, Dayna, I literally have a whiteboard, and I didn't even think to like, before you go on Canva and lose hours of your life, just whiteboard it out, sister. So I love it. And also I think it's like, there's so much information often. So it's just visually 1,000 times better for the person watching it too, than like trying to get it into this little 500 by 500 pixel Instagram post. So everyone follow, it's Crypto Bec, right?
It is CryptoBec _ yeah.
And you have it on Insta too. Yeah, _ you can't forget that.
Too.
So I'd actually love to dive into a little bit more. A lot of people, we know this great resignation's happening right now. And I don't know about you, but I have been hearing more and more people in my orbit asking if I can hop on a call to talk about, starting their own consulting thing, going freelance, starting a business, just because they know this has been my path the last few years. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of what triggered you to take the plunge and how your experience has been the last year. If there's any kind of advice you have, how fundraising's going. We all know how much of a grind that can be. Yeah, the good, bad, and the ugly, I guess.
It's so funny you mentioned the Great Resignation, because I literally was just working out prior to this with my housemate, and she's running a startup herself. And we were both just chatting about the shift in like culture around hiring people and starting to work with people, especially in Web3. And it's becoming so apparent that so many people have a side hustle or two or three. And so the nature of how you're having conversations and how you're hiring is very different all of a sudden, because people don't want to work full time, especially in Web3. People aren't coming in to take like a comfy, like long-term salary. They're doing a couple of different things. And so the management of that time and how you work with companies is changing, and the conversation is changing, and there's a shift, which like, this is me, first time CEO, founder, trying to like hire people. I'm like really working to find the right people to work with us in a way that works for them, where I've been brought up in a world where it was like, yes, whatever you want, I'll do it, please hire me. So there's a big shift that's occurring. I like the idea of people being able to have things that like get them excited that they can work alongside of while they're doing their job. I actually do really love that, but it is providing like its own kind of unique challenges as well hiring. But that wasn't your question. Your question was how they kind of get started and get into the space.
And I would like to go back to this part of the conversation because
okay, cool. Yeah, you threw that out, my brain went.
Wherever the universe takes you, girl, just run.
Okay. But very quickly on the entrance in, I worked in banking and finance for 4 years in Australia's biggest business bank. And I had a moment in 2017 where I was introduced to crypto as a topic and a concept by my co-founder now, and started investing. Took a very long route of learning. It was like 1.5 years. I went to developer meetups instead of going to like normal people like conversations, because I thought that was a great way to learn, and it wasn't. It was like a great way to like get very confused and hear about smart contracts and Ethereum and mining, but that was pretty much it. And so eventually, like 1.5 years later, I kind of surfaced, and my friend had started a consulting business. And so he hired me as like marketing, social, helping with businesses that were launching tokens and raising. And that was probably my big jump, like out of the bank. And the bank at that point was like, I'd done my degree. Like I had kind of 3 years under my belt. I'd like worked my way up into a really like well-paid position. My parents were like, now you're going to get married and have babies and like get paid really well in this like soft, cushy bank. And I was like, actually, I'm going to like dip out to like LA and work for a startup that's going to pay me in crypto. I don't even know if my visa stuff is sorted. I'm going to live in like a house with a bunch of other people working for this company. And no, I'm not having babies right now. And so that was a bit of a shock for everyone and a bit of a jump for me out of, I guess, a life I thought I was building. But very quickly fell into the world of Web3 and crypto and have kind of loved it since then.
I love that. And I don't know you really well, but I just want to tell you that I'm very proud of you for taking that plunge and doing you, because that is my hope for everyone, as someone that has done it in my own way, my own journey. And I truly, for better or worse, like I sometimes joke that I'm living a social experiment of like, I have gotten really clear on who I am, what I want, and I'm going to at least go for the life that I want. And once you take the first leap and the more you put yourself out there and you realize like, even no matter how many times you fall, you get the fuck back up. And it's so the rewards. And as it starts to slowly and surely work out and you fall 100 times, as we all know, it's just, I think it's the way to live your life. And especially women, there's so many of us that just settle for the status quo. And we're living in a time where especially as women, for the first time in history, we don't have to accept that. And I think that's really exciting. And I just want everyone to kind of lean into that in whatever way they're comfortable with. So kudos to you. I know it's not easy.
Yeah, agreed. And I've just done a very similar thing. So I've just left my cushy finance job, was there for 9 years, had worked my way up, got the well-paid job, was really comfortable. So I thought, yeah, fuck this, and quit and went to work in DeFi about a month ago, full-time. Obviously, I'd been doing it as a side hustle, as you said, since 2017, pretty much crypto, but then more working in this space for the last year or so. But I think we're at this perfect point now where not only have we just had a global pandemic that has made us all realize like, shit, life can change in a week to something that's completely different, where you take away our access to everything. And similarly to how you were talking about the truckers being so fundamental in understanding why decentralization is so important with finance. COVID has been so fundamental in making everyone realize this shit's for real. We get one life, let's live it now. And anything that doesn't kind of make you happy or set your soul on fire, it's really not worth it, because things change like that. So that's all happened, but now we've got this whole new industry with so much potential for every single person, no matter what your experience is, to kind of fall into. And for women, this is huge, because it's an industry where there's so much more flexibility. And it's not just women, it's people who are disabled as well, who can't, access traditional workplaces. It's completely groundbreaking, and it's so fucking exciting.
There's so much opportunity. There's something that I've noticed, like, that I will kind of call out in terms of some of the conversations I've had more recently with people that are leaving. And it's interesting, Jo, to hear, like, you said that you had this period of like crossover before you actually jumped completely in. I think people are getting like excited about the industry, and there's this feeling of like, fuck it, I'll just leave my work and just like pop over here and start working in Web3. And the excitement of that wears very thin when you land and you realize like, oh, I'm going to be getting paid in crypto, and like, oh, this company isn't like necessarily like set up like completely correctly, and there isn't like the structures that I'm quite used to. So there's like, I'm watching people adjust and have to like realize that we are still in and kind of in infancy in this industry. Surprisingly, even though it's been around for 10 years, there are still a lot of kind of like newer businesses and newer ways of running things. And so when you leave like the kind of Web 2 world, or you jump straight into this, just know that like it isn't as easy as just picking it up. And actually, to your point around having like a soft entry in, or like a slow handover, I think is a really great way to getting used to what you're moving into, because it's not the same as before.
Yeah, two things. It's very similar to startup culture in that you will be responsible for everything all at once. And if you don't have time management skills, you're going to struggle. And yeah, there is the difficulty in getting paid in crypto. There's solutions coming. So I'm sure everyone in different countries is handling this differently. I'm using crypto.com, which has a debit card, which has made my life so much easier. But another thing I noticed, so I think a lot of people are very excited about DAOs and the potential that gives for kind of decentralized working. And I saw a trend in DAOs. So I started dipping my toes in a couple of different DAOs. And one thing to be quite aware of in that culture as well is, yes, you can jump into a DAO and you can contribute and you can get paid for your contribution. But one thing I think a lot of DAOs are doing at the moment is expecting kind of full-time hours from you and only compensating you for a very, very small amount of those hours. And that's, if you're switching from regular career to Web3, I think that's not sustainable.
And for anyone that is listening that is not even close to going into Web3, I think there's larger cultural trends here we're speaking to, which are, you have optionality. So if you're a designer, you can work part-time for 3 different companies and control your hours a bit more, maybe make more money, but again, kind of have control of your reality. And what I think we are continuing to see, and a lot of people are arguing that the creator economy is going to kind of transform into this wider thing called the contractor economy, because Web 2, again, Web 3 aside, there's a lot of value for the employee and the employer in hiring a contract-based worker. You get to test each other out. There's a lot of costs associated with hiring the wrong hire, right? So you test each other out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. So I think that's how I would encourage people to also think about it. What is your skill? You know, can you sell your IP? Do you want, you could make 80 grand a year on TikTok if that is your thing and you have something to teach people.
Right.
That all said, one, this isn't and we touched on this. This also goes back to my favorite quote, know thyself. Like, some people do really well in corporate America and structure, and that's okay.
And I love it.
Trust, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It's hard AF. There's pros and cons to everything. And the other thing, I'll use this as a little bit of a segue that I love to get deep on. I'd love to hear just where your brains even go with this, is crypto culture, Web3 culture. In so many ways, it's at the forefront of cultural shifts and trends. And I think that's a lot of what we're speaking to here with the future of work, right? We're seeing it with DAOs, we're seeing it with flexibility, and it's slowly becoming a more popular in Web 2 or other industries. But do you guys agree kind of with that cultural comment? And what are some other areas that you've observed that Web3 crypto culture is at the forefront of that you think will permeate the rest of our lives?
Good question.
Thanks.
I think
Let me think on this.
You can come back to me on it.
So for me, the biggest shift we're seeing at the moment culturally is a real focus on the importance of community when you're building a product. So historically, we would see everything's pushed through product, advertising, targeted ads, all of those things. Now, what we're seeing in Web3, so a large part through the NFT world, we're also seeing it in crypto. The foundation of how you sell your product is by building a community of people who, at the moment, it's primarily on Discord. We've all got our opinions on whether Discord's a good or bad tool for these things. And we can get deep on that one. But yeah, one of the biggest shifts for me is really that focus on community and where that can go, both good and bad. So there's obviously a huge win for companies being able to focus on authenticity and build and raise money based on an authentic community. But for users, so if I'm wanting to engage in an NFT project at the moment, I have to get involved in 10 different communities. I have to join 10 different Discords. I have to grind for whitelist, which basically involves just spamming all of my friends. That is leaning, so you've got this culture where we're promoting authenticity and community building. But when you land in that community, you've got to completely destroy your friends' lives by hammering them with invites.
It's so contrary as well to like what we're trying to do, which is like, the industry feels like it's building towards trying to create a spot for itself and demonstrate like credibility and trust. And then the marketers of Web3, and this is, I tweeted about this the other week, which is just like around the guerrilla marketing styles of projects and communities, is so distasteful and untrustworthy and spammy that it doesn't denote any kind of trust from people. So seeing that trend over and over again kills me, which again is where I like, I'm so excited for like the marketers of Web2 to come in and like polish this up and remove that. But you have me thinking on this topic, which I've been thinking on more recently because I've been speaking with people that are running DAOs, and I love the thesis behind the DAOs, and it obviously plays into like the broader idea around decentralization and flattening structures and kind of removing that power play in one central authority. But the scaling option is a problem. And I see the scaling option as a problem in communities in general, right? Which is where it's not feasible for NFT projects or even just general communities when we get adoption. If you have the world in this, it's not going to work to speak to millions of people through a Discord channel. So that's where for me, like I'm very passionate about building community into our product and those experiences into our product in a way that is scalable so that people can have a version of that experience without having to pop in a Discord with 3 million other people all saying GM. Like it's just unfortunately not a scalable thing. So I think that's a topic I'm really interested in, is like, I love the community, and it's such a core component to like feeling a part of something that's bigger and building new connections and having spaces to ask questions. But I don't know what that looks like on scale.
This is my favorite topic, as I think you both know at this point. Jo certainly does. I've sent her hours of voice notes with me just ranting about my thoughts on community and how
Dayna's warming up. But she's like, this is me.
Yeah. So I totally agree. So one, I think what I want to see end as soon as possible is, if we know that authenticity is vital to Web3, but just the world we live in, there's less room for smoke and mirrors, thankfully. I wish people would stop just copying each other. So just because you see that X community is in Discord and it is huge and thriving doesn't mean that that's the best way for you to authentically provide community that drives value, right? And I also think everyone's so focused on inclusivity, which inclusivity is very important in making people feel safe, but there's nothing wrong with niche, more exclusive communities. It doesn't mean you have to be mean about it and like, you can't sit with us, but size isn't everything. And I again, the online communities aren't serving us, any of us, Web3 or Web2. I'm in a ton in Web2. And again, they provide great, I say again, because Joe's heard this a million times, but they provide great resources to me and they're doing a phenomenal job. But do I feel like I'm part of a connected community? Absolutely not. And maybe that's okay, but everyone's just like slapping it on. We know we need it. And it's doing the opposite of what we wanted to do, as you so eloquently put when you kind of kicked off what you said earlier.
Yeah. And I think what you said is exactly what we're missing. So I think we've seen a lot of people come from other more traditional industries into DeFi and crypto and Web3, but we're not yet seeing the marketers and the product designers come over. So when we get the marketers come on over, we might see a bit of a better situation. But I really don't know what the answer is to that, because on one hand, the communities that I'm in have led to my best results in crypto.
Right.
I've formed connections that will stay with me for a lifetime, more than likely, through Telegram groups and crypto. But is that doable on scale from a product design perspective? Do we need that? I don't know, but I'm very interested to see how it kind of comes out in the mix.
And maybe we don't, in the sense that maybe this like really intense community experience is just for your initial early people that are joining the industry and building and contributing. And then maybe when you have like the user adoption, it's a version of that, but hopefully in like the product experience or something.
There's an interview I listened to with Alexis Ohanian, and he said something that I thought was so wise. Obviously, he is one of the most successful, well-known OG online community builders with Reddit. And he said, what I think most people get wrong with community, especially online communities, is they're trying to build it for what they think a digital community should look like. But at the end of the day, the most successful digital communities mirror what a physical IRL community looks like in some way, shape, or form. So I would encourage everyone to think that way. And I do think, again, back to what your goal is and who you're serving, sometimes size, there's so much value in that. And you're right. I said, no, there's no community serving me. And that's not true at all. Like, I've connected with so many amazing people that are now, I call very close friends from communities. But again, those communities were smaller, and there was more of that one-on-one connection that I was able to have. So,
and it's similar to the values points. I think those of us who've been here probably earlier on care more deeply about the values. And I think it's like that with community. I really hope we don't lose that element. So we don't want to lose the values. We don't want to lose the focus on community. But how do we build that in a way that actually works and makes sense to people?
The other thing I've been thinking a ton about with Unblocked, and it's kind of actually changed in my pitch a little bit, is I'm at a point where I'm pretty okay and clear that I don't think I'm the best person based on my skills and interest levels to be a community builder. That is a really, really, that's a skill set, and that's fine. We're all good at different things, right? But I've been thinking a lot about how can we do partnerships and create experiences and do things that community is a byproduct from the partnerships and the collaborations we're doing. And I think that's just as okay, right? Like,
absolutely,
all do it all.
I was literally about to say that around the community topic. It was something that like it's something that came up for us as we were building and pitching and fundraising, which was like, what is your community? What does it look like? And for me, I've been a part of communities prior to building Clutch, where, you know, the two companies I worked for had investors that had bought up our token. And so they were very active, interested communities. Now we've started building a wallet, which is a product that doesn't have a financial incentive or reason for people to necessarily like engage with us beyond just aligning with the mission and engaging with some of our educational content. Now, every community is doing educational content, but other communities have a financial incentive as to why they're being brought in, which is where the DAOs make so much sense, because you're getting that buy-in from buying up the token, and you know, it makes sense to build communities off that. So for us, I think like we've had to make this intentional decision around, we're building a product, our community will come from our users in the product, but prior to that, trying to like build community around this idea aggressively isn't actually as needed as like finding partnerships, to your point. Like that is just as useful of a way of contributing back without having to like have yet another community that's there following along in your journey.
Yeah. And I think just more kind of tactfully from a business standpoint, it's a different business model, right? Like that's a hire you need if you want to lean into building your community. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, if you're a startup, there's not unlimited funds most of the time, and you need to be really smart with where you're putting your resources, both time and financial resources. So, are you still fundraising?
Fundraising is done. So close the round.
Mazel! That's amazing. Do you are you a new woman?
I'm a new woman. So it's a weird feeling. You finish and you're like, oh, now what do I do? Because you've been in these, I mean, you build the fucking business is what you do, but you've been in back-to-back calls, and just like the process of it is just so all-encompassing and consuming, that when it's done, it's like, oh, like now what?
What do I do?
And so now what is go and build the thing, which has been just great to have like that space back in the day, and just really exciting to like have the backing and the support from some cool people. And yeah, I mean, it's probably going to have to, the fundraising process will start again, not too far away, but I'm going to enjoy the grace in between, which is great.
And your co-founder is male?
Two co-founders, Sheila Batts, who is our CTO. She is, her background's in Oracle. She's worked as a kind of lead in the tech space for quite some time, has built a wallet before. So she was a wonderful, amazing find early on. And then James is my other co-founder, male. He was actually my introduction into crypto in 2017. So there's like a beautiful little circle of him being the first person that introduced me into it. And then now kind of being able to work with him and build this business. So he's in New York, which is why I kind of come visit. He's good.
And is it just the three of you right now? I know you'll be adding to the team, I'm sure, now that you've closed.
No, it's we've actually been adding for a while. So like, and I didn't realize this is the first time I've raised money, but you can raise and money can come in the door, and then you can start using it essentially. You know, the people that are backing you early on want you to start building and making the most of the market and the timing. So we are now at a team of about 12, which is crazy to think how much it's grown in such a short period of time. But we are building a web application and a mobile product. And so that requires front end, back end, smart contract people for both of those products. And they're both unique skill sets. So it has meant a growing team, but it's different too. I'll tell you what's different is like, you have these people and everyone's dispersed across the world, you know, in different time zones. And so it's a new way of thinking about company culture, bringing people together, you know, knowing who you're working with, but then it's also Web3. So it's not like you're doing the cooler room chat every day. So it's a shift in thinking about company culture, building relationships and rapport, and kind of tying people into the bigger vision of what you're building. So that's a shift for me, and something I'm still kind of learning a bit about. I got triggered by a tweet yesterday, which was like, people that call their companies fam is a red flag. And I was like, oh, we call our company fam. We do it.
Oh my God, no. I have seen people say that, but it's so funny because there's no playbook, and I'm someone that fancies myself as a builder and a disruptor. And I'm very comfortable at this point saying that. Before I got into this whole space, I was like, I lived for things where there was no playbook. And now we're in this whole world. I'm like, okay, maybe like just something being consistent would be kind of nice. Like anything, people being in the same country. This is where the fun lies, right?
I'm going through the same thing. Yeah. So the Minky, the wallet I'm working with, half of the people are in Australia. So that's like an 11-hour time difference. But what I'm noticing is, as you said, it's completely different in terms of interacting and building culture. It's actually working really well. But what also works well, so a lot of people say, how does that even work? Because you awake through completely different days. But actually what it means is the company moves a lot faster, because I'm working one shift, they're working the other shift, 24 hours instead of 12. So
it's incredible. It's actually incredible. It nearly seems like a waste of time now that I think back to the previous time, which was like, you're both trying to do the same thing and then everyone sleeps for a bit. And then you go back to try and review the work instead of the constant move. And I guess it moves in line with the 24/7 market, which makes sense. But it is nice to wake up and have like things being worked on.
Exactly.
Well, we're almost at noon, and I'm sure everyone has a busy day. So 2 questions I want to end with, and then I want you to tell everyone how they can sign up for beta and where they can find you and all that fun stuff. But 1, any women builders, change makers, creators, Web3, Web2 that you think we should interview next, and or just that you are obsessed with right now and think the whole world should know about?
There was a lady, and this is me so bad, that I spoke to last week. She's actually from Australia. She's building a NFT project where every time you buy one of their NFTs, they plant a tree, and there is like this technology that watches the tree grow. The value of your NFT increases as the tree grows, and it's this like give back to, I guess, like the world and the environment as this kind of world is building out. She's going to explain it a lot better. Her and her co-founder are from LA, and she's actually in Berlin. Their weapons, I think their company is called Sadu, SADU. That would be a cool one. There's a lady called Alana who's built Eve Wealth, which is a DAO of women that again, she's out of LA. I think they've got like over maybe 200 or 300 members now of women that have come together. They invest as a DAO, they invest in different products, but more so kind of focusing on, I think, like women-led ones. They're actually running a Wealthverse online conference today. She is another powerhouse that I kind of look to at the moment. So they would be my 2
we'll add all their info in the show notes. And lastly, my favorite question, some people have been able to answer it, some haven't, but dream collab could be with your business, could be personal, dead or alive. Who would it be?
Okay. Dream collab. I'm gonna tell you my NFT idea right now, which is kind of crazy. Because no one knows.
You heard it here first, guys.
I'm dropping it, and I'm gonna put it in the metaverse so it happens.
Put it in the universe, manifest it.
Okay. Clutch NFT drop. It's a fashion NFT. It is a series of 10,000 clutches. We partner with Hermes and Paris Hilton and launch the NFT within the wallet.
I love it. You're the second person. We interviewed Emma Bates from DM last week or earlier this week, and her dream collab was, she didn't even think about it, which I loved so much. She was just like Paris Hilton, and obviously she's so brilliant. But you're the second time we've gotten Paris this week. So
wow. You need to get Paris
come on the show. We got to get a little bit bigger for that, but and tell everyone when are we launching? I know you can sign up for beta on the website, clutchwallet.xyz.
.xyz, so Web3. Clutchwallet.xyz. Beta is on our website. We actually have our first beta testers. There's 10 of them that are starting with the product today. So that's been really exciting. I would love to have a product like to our community in about a month and a half. So if you sign up for the beta, you'll get the email when that's ready. And the only other thing I could offer up, which might be of use for any listeners, is that we're running like workshops, hour-long workshops as an introduction into Web3 and crypto. That kind of whiteboard is something that I go through amongst a number of other things. So that's open for the next month. It's free, and you can sign up on our website as well.
Awesome. Well, you're an absolute gem. Can't wait to keep doing all the fun things with you.
Yeah, we love you.
I am part of beta, so I can't wait to play around. But thank you for your time, and keep crushing and taking over the world, sister.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for having the space, and looking forward to continuing to collaborate with the two of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.